Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Yasser Ahmed. Today we're going to be looking at Chapter 4, Computer Networks from the CIE ICT IGCSE course. So, what is a computer network? A network is two or more computers or electronic devices connected together so that they can exchange data. So, for example, a network allows computers to share files, users to message each other, and resources can be shared. So for example, one printer could be shared with many computers in one classroom. So network connections between computers are typically created using cables or via wireless signals. So let's have a look at this quick diagram here. So on a network we'll have computers, also known as workstations, connected. So the workstations normally connect to a device called a switch. The switch allows for different devices on a network to communicate. So basically every device on the network will be connected to the switch. Okay, we also have the bridge. So the bridge connects two parts of the same network together. So this could be an extra ICT lab that's been created in your school, and we want to connect this part of the network to this network, so we need to have a bridge. Okay, the wireless access point provides wireless connectivity to devices such as laptops, tablets, and smartphones to the network. The router allows your network to connect with other networks. Also, the internet is an example of network of networks. So basically, the router could provide your network with internet connection as well. And finally, we're going to be looking at the server. So the main purpose of a server is to store data centrally, which can be backed up, and also to have central settings for the network. So let's have a look at the example here. So for example, if user A logs into this computer here with their username and password, the files that they save will not be saved locally onto the computer. The files will be saved onto the server. Now the advantage of doing this is user A is then able to access their work from any workstation on the network when they type in their username and password. So what is the advantage of using networks? So it's easier to share files and data. Resources such as printers and internet connections can be shared, so sharing of resources. Communication with other networks using emails, instant messaging, video conferencing, etc. Using a server, we can store data centrally, so using a file server for ease of access and backup. So if we do use a server, data is backed up every day. So for example, a file is corrupted or goes missing, it would be easy to recover that lost file. And finally, we can keep all of our settings central, so we can use any workstation. So the technician could restrict types of access. So for example, could restrict users from using a USBs to avoid viruses spreading. It could be simply to restrict users from changing settings in the control panel to change the desktop to a different background, for example. So the settings could be set centrally for the network. Now the disadvantage of using networks is because we're going to have more data on a computer network, there's a greater risk of hackers hacking into a network to obtain that data. Also, because the computers or workstations are connected together, there's a greater risk of viruses spreading and disabling the network. There's significant cost of extra equipment, so as you can see, we'd have to purchase additional hardware components to run and maintain a network. Also, you'd have to think about the cost of cabling to connect all of the workstations and devices together. When a network is down, computers cannot be used as a standalone computer. And if we're all sharing the same resource, for example a printer, you may have to wait if everyone is printing at the same time to receive your printout. Okay, so a typical exam question. Discuss the advantage and disadvantage of using a computer network. The advantage of using a computer network is that it's easier to share files and data. Also, resources such as one printer can be shared with many workstations. However, printer queues could be long. Since all the computers are connected together, there is a greater risk of hackers or viruses spreading, which could disable the network. In addition, the expenditure of the equipment could be significant. Furthermore, a network will allow data to be stored centrally, which means files can be accessed from any workstation on the network. Also, central settings can be applied to all workstations, for example, restrictions in changing computer settings from the control panel. Okay, now we're going to understand how a router works and its purpose. So the router can connect your network or computer to the internet. The internet is, for example, is a network of networks. So can connect local area networks together to form wide area networks. This is something we'll look at later. Can transfer data between networks. So let's have a look at this diagram here. So we've got two workstations connected to a switch, which is connected to a router. So in this network we have data which is outgoing. So as you can see here, we have data outgoing onto the internet, and then data coming in from the internet or from other networks into your network. So the router transfers data between networks. Okay, each packet of data contains the following information. So a header to identify a data packet. Each device which will be connected to the internet will have an IP address. So the sender and receiver's IP address. So the router will know where to direct that particular piece of data using IP address. And a number of data packets making up the whole message. So the router can also connect devices using cables or wireless signals. It stores information about which computer is connected to which network. Okay, so any website is saved onto the web server. So any web pages are stored on a web server. Web pages have a unique IP address and domain names to find and communicate with each other. So the routers will direct packets of data across the internet to its destination. So everything connected to the internet has an IP address. So as you can see, this data may be coming from Facebook to your computer, or going to your Gmail account if you've been tagged in a particular picture. So the purpose of the router is to basically direct packets of data across the internet, across networks, to its specific destination. Okay, so common network devices. So a hub and a switch both connect a number of computers together to make a LAN. As we said before, a switch allows different devices on a network to communicate. So this is a switch. Let's look at a switch. It's known as a smart device. Sends specific packets of data to specific computers on a LAN using workstation's unique MAC address. So each workstation which connects to the network via a switch will have its own unique MAC address. So the switch will send packets of data specifically to each computer according to its MAC address. So the switch is more secure, however more expensive than the hub, normally used in larger networks in schools or offices. So the hub device is now obsolete. It's known as a dumb device. What the hub would do, it would send data packets to all the workstations on the network, which would cause network traffic. So as you can see, let's compare the two pictures here. So let's say there's a packet of data. It would go specifically to this computer on a switch, because the switch will learn the computer's MAC address. However, the hub is a dumb device and would send packets of data across the network to each workstation. Therefore, it has a poor security, only would be suitable for small home networks. But like I said before, the hub has now become an obsolete device. So how does the switch work? So when you're connecting a device to the switch, as you can see, we've got many workstations here connecting to the switch. The switch will start to store the computer's MAC address. So let's have a look here. So workstations connect to switch ports. Each network card has a unique address or MAC address, which switches can use to identify a workstation. So each switch will have a switch table. You always start with an empty switch table. The switch will learn each workstation's MAC address when it sends a packet of data across the network. So for example, this workstation here, if it sends something across the network, okay, the switch table will automatically learn this address here. Now, if this computer wants to send a message to this computer here, for example, the sending computer address will be stored into the switch table. So as we go along, as the computers are connecting and talking to each other, communicating information, every time a computer or workstation on a network sends a packet of data, the switch table will learn the MAC address. So then in the future, if a particular workstation wants to connect to another workstation, it will be able to identify using this MAC address which has been stored in a previous encounter. Okay, so let's look here. Sending packets of data from workstation 1 to 2. The switch will send data packets to all computers because it does not know the MAC address for workstation 2. Let's look at this diagram now. Sending packets of data from workstation 2 to 1. Now the switch table has the MAC address for workstation 1. It is possible for workstation 2 to send a direct packet of data to workstation 1. Okay, let's look at this question here. Compare and contrast the use of a router and a switch. The router is used to connect local area networks together to form a wide area network and also to the internet. The router will transfer data between networks using IP addresses to direct information. The switch is used to connect computers together to create a local area network. Each workstation connected to the network will have its own MAC address. The router will learn each workstation's MAC address in order to send specific packets of data to the correct workstation. Okay, so let's look at these other common network devices. So we have a modem. The modems will convert analog signals from telephone line to digital signals which can be read by the computer. So the modem was a device like a router which was used to connect computers to the internet. The modem also converts digital signals back into analog for transmission over the telephone line. Okay. The network interface card. So a network interface card will be found in a computer. It could be a separate component or part of the motherboard. Basically, the network interface card allows you to connect a device to a network. The network interface card will contain the MAC address which will be used to identify the computer to the network. Bridges. A bridge is used to connect two parts of a local area network together so they function as a single local area network. Two switches can be connected using the bridge device. As you can see here, so the bridge is a device which can connect two parts of a local area network together. Okay, understand the use of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth in networks. So Wi-Fi is a wireless networking technology which makes it possible to connect devices with a wireless connection to a network or to a single computer. So the advantage of using Wi-Fi is a reduced cost of cabling, so safer, less trip hazards, or you won't trip over cables or wires. It's easier to connect other devices to a network, makes the computer portable as long as it's within the range of the wireless access point. So you can connect additional devices to a network, so for example your tablet or your laptop. The disadvantage of using Wi-Fi is the area could be limited, so if you walk beyond the range of a network then you will not be connected. The strength of the signal could get weaker as you walk out of the range. So for example, if you're not within range, the signal could be weaker. It could be slower to transfer data if you're connected wirelessly compared to a physical connection. It could be easier to hack into, less secure with a Wi-Fi connection. Physical obstacles can interfere with the signal, can cause disconnection. So let's say for example thick concrete walls or obstacles could affect the quality of your signal. Okay, Bluetooth is also a wireless networking technology designed for very short range connections. So connecting wireless devices such as a mouse, a phone, a headset to a computer which are in close proximity. Transferring files between devices, so for example it could be a file from your laptop you transfer into your phone, or your phone to your laptop. Printing wirelessly from a tablet or mobile phone. So compared to Wi-Fi, Bluetooth has very slow data transfer speeds. It has a shorter distance of coverage and limited signal strength. Again, compared to the Wi-Fi has an increased range compared to a shorter range of the Bluetooth. It's greater risk of interception of data and it's less secure, supports a limited number of devices in a network. So Bluetooth and Wi-Fi can connect devices together. Discuss the advantage and disadvantage of using Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. Bluetooth is more useful when transferring data between two devices, whereas Wi-Fi is more suited to full-scale networks. The devices connected via Bluetooth should be near to each other, whereas Wi-Fi has a larger range. Less data tends to be transferred with Bluetooth. Bluetooth uses a lower bandwidth, which means data transfer speeds are slower compared to Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi has better security than Bluetooth, however the cost of Bluetooth is cheaper than Wi-Fi. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi both use wireless technology, which means there's no need for cables. This reduces costs and trip hazards. Bluetooth is more energy efficient than Wi-Fi. Okay, methods which can be used to connect computers to networks. So let's look at Wi-Fi again. So using Wi-Fi can allow you to connect to the internet from any room in a house without the use of cables. In addition, multiple devices can be connected at the same time. Okay, satellite. Satellite can be used almost anywhere in the world. Since it connects via satellite, it has better coverage. Its general use is for the internet. 3G, 4G. So 3G and 4G are used in smartphones to connect wireless to the internet. Allows for access on the move even within areas with no Wi-Fi. 3G and 4G is not affected by rain or snow as is a form of satellite communication. So many computer networks are connected using cables. For some are now connected using wireless technology. Discuss the advantage and disadvantage of using wireless networks compared to using cabled networks. So the advantage of using wireless networks is that it can increase the range of the network, making it easier to add additional devices and computers. With a cabled network, you would be restricted to the number of network ports. Furthermore, it could potentially be a cheaper alternative as you wouldn't have to buy cables and modify the building. In contrast, the wireless signal could be limited and therefore weaker in some parts of the network due to physical obstacles. The cabled network would provide a more stable and quicker connection. Okay, so setting up a network, what is required? So you need hardware and software and also an internet service provider. So let's start with internet service provider. An example here in Qatar, it could be Ooredoo, it could be Vodafone, UK, it could be BT, it could be Sky. So to set up an account with the internet service provider to receive an internet connection. So you need an account with an internet service provider to receive the connection. So let's look at the hardware which could be required to set up an internet connection. So the router, which will connect your local area network to the internet. Okay, possibly a switcher or hub to connect network devices together. Network cables to create physical connections. Firewall to keep your network secure. Servers to manage network functions. So let's have a look at what software would be required. So obviously to use the internet you need a web browser. So for example Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, Firefox to browse the internet. You may also need an email client, for example Outlook, to send email messages including attachments to other users. And if you are connected to the internet you may need antivirus software like Kaspersky or Norton's, antivirus software or spyware software to protect your computers from external threats, viruses or hackers. Okay, so exam question. So describe what an ISP is. Apart from security measures, describe what it offers its customers. So internet service provider provides internet access. Internet service providers often offers web space and domain names to create their own websites. Also, the internet service provider provides user with an email address. The ISP also provides a router to connect to the internet. In addition, they may also offer storage space to save data in the cloud. So now we're going to be looking at common network environments. So we've talked about a local area network and a wide area network. Let's look at these two in a little bit more detail. So a local area network, so LAN stands for local area network, It covers a small area normally confined to one building or within close proximities. There could be a number of buildings which are quite close together. A wide area network is a network that extends over a larger geographical area. So that's the obvious difference. This is over a smaller area, the local area network, and a wide area network covers or extends over a larger geographical area. Okay, let's go back to LAN. LAN consists of a number of computers and devices that usually connect to a switch which is connected to a router. So you may find a local area network, in one school or one office, one network. Now, a wide area network is often created by joining several local area networks together. So what we could have here is one school's network connected to another school's network, or offices which have been connected together from different buildings. So routers are used to connect local area networks together to form a wide area network. The most common example of the wide area network is the internet. It's basically a number of networks which have been connected together so we can transfer data across the internet. Now, the wireless local area network is a LAN that uses radio signals, Wi-Fi, to connect computers instead of cables. So as you can see, you may have physical connections and also access points which basically allow wireless connections to the network. Okay, so access points are connected to a wide network at fixed locations. These devices provide the wireless access to the devices on a network. It is much more convenient to use wireless connections instead of running long wires all over a building. So this is a local area network that also has access points at certain points which provides wireless connectivity. Okay, so describe the difference between the common network environments, LAN or local area network, wide area network, wireless local area network. So before I answer this question, I've made some small points here. So for the local area network, it's confined to a smaller geographical area and normally to one building. The wide area network covers a larger geographical area. It's local area networks which are connected together to form wide area networks. And a wireless local area network uses wireless signals to connect devices. Access points are connected to wired connections. So the local area networks normally cover a smaller geographical area, confined normally to one building. Wide area networks are local area networks which have been connected together with a router. They normally cover a large geographical area. The connections between the local area networks could either be with cables or satellite signals. Wireless local area networks use wireless signals to connect devices. Access points are connected to the wired networks. Okay, so what is the difference between intranet and internet? Okay, so let's look at the internet. The internet is public, available to all users. Internet is a network of networks. Internet is global. Internet has more information than the intranet. So this one here. So typical uses of the internet would be to view web pages, to send and receive email messages, to share files, to communicate using voice over internet protocol and video conferencing, to play online multiplayer games, streaming video, audio content, online shopping and banking. So that's the internet. So what is the intranet? Intranet is private within one organization. So for example, a university could set up an intranet to share specific resources with their students, or businesses could have an intranet to share specific files with their staff, or it could be to allow for communication to take place between members of staff. So intranet is private, it tends to be policed and managed. Intranet has an extra layer of security, so basically you would have to log in using a username and password to gain access to the intranet. Data found on intranet is likely to be more reliable, more relevant than found on the internet. So typical uses of an intranet would be viewing internal web pages, for example, a company, a schools, university, internal email and instant messaging between workers, sharing of internal documents. Okay, so describe the differences between the internet and the intranet. So the internet is a global network of networks. It's open to the public domain, whereas the internet is private and normally within one organization. The internet requires authentication to log on, which provides an extra layer of security. Information found on the internet will be more reliable and relevant than the internet because the internet tends to be policed and managed. However, more information is available on the internet. Give 3 reasons why some companies have intranets. So it is possible to prevent employees accessing undesirable websites. The company can ensure that available information is specific to their needs. Also, it makes it easier to make sure confidential messages stay within a company. Furthermore, there's less chance of the company's computers from being hacked. So this question is all about why would you use the intranet? To avoid employees going onto the internet and viewing undesirable websites, to share information which is specific to their company, to keep information confidential and to reduce the chance of company computers being hacked whilst being online over the internet. In order to make reliable information available to all students, schools often put information on their intranet. Describe what is meant by an intranet. So another exam question, so we're looking at a school for example. An intranet is a computer network which normally exists usually within one organization. The intranet meets the internal needs of an organization. Intranet is private and tends to be policed or managed. Intranet has an extra layer of security, and data found in an intranet is likely to be more relevant to the user's needs. So accessing the internet. So we can access the internet using many different devices. So we've got laptop computers, desktop computers, tablets, smartphones. So let's look at a laptop. So the advantage of using a laptop is more portable and small in size compared to desktop computers, bigger screens compared to tablets and phones. So the disadvantage of using a laptop to connect to the internet, touchpad may be difficult to use to navigate web pages. Processors are not as fast as desktop computers. Now, with a desktop computer, it will have a stable internet connection since the connection is normally wired. Use of a number of input devices include pointing devices, which will make navigation easier. So you can use a mouse, a trackable for those with limited motility. The disadvantage of using a desktop to connect to the internet is you have to be connected to a power source at all times, and the desktop is not portable. Now the tablet and the smartphone. So tablet more portable than desktops and laptops, however less than smartphones. So the mobile or the smartphone is portable more so than these other devices. It's easy to carry around whilst you're on the move. So the mobile phone, smartphone, always likely to have a mobile phone at all times, so it's more chance you can access the internet. With the mobile, you can access internet via phone networks, 4G or 3G. So the disadvantage with the tablets and smartphones, because you're connecting wirelessly, the signal strength is dependent on location. Also, the screen is smaller compared to desktop or laptop computers. Not all websites are designed to be used by mobile phones or tablets. Touchscreen may be difficult to use to find specific information, and the battery life is limited on the tablet and the smartphone compared to the desktop, which is always connected to the main. Now, another advantage for tablets or smartphones, these days websites are now being designed especially to be used with smartphones, for example. So you may have specific types of websites which can be used on the smartphones, which would improve accessibility to browse between the different pages. Okay, now we're going to be looking at 4.2 network issues and communication. So security issues regarding data transfer and network communication. So what types of threats do network face? Okay, so the network could face the threat of hackers, viruses and spyware spreading, and phishing and pharming attempts. So how can a hacker affect your network and data? So a hacker, they could introduce a virus or spyware to the network. So we'll be looking at these in a little bit more detail later on. The threat to the data. So data could be deleted, it could be edited, it could be corrupted or replicated. Data could be sold or passed on to other people. In recent hacking attempts, personal details has been obtained, for example credit card details, which have been passed on to third parties, so that could be quite dangerous to a company to lose personal data of their customers. So the threat to the network may have to be shut down to quarantine a virus, which means this will stop production and cost an organization a lot of money. Okay, so should the internet be policed? We have obvious advantages and disadvantages. So let's focus on the disadvantage first. It would be extremely difficult and expensive to police the internet. The infrastructure, including staff and officers, would have to be required. Again, this would be expensive. Would be difficult to enforce different rules in different countries. So every country has different policies regarding the usage of the internet. So it would be difficult to enforce a set of uniform rules, and it could go against freedom of speech. So the advantage of policing the internet is to protect vulnerable users gaining access to undesirable websites, to prevent illegal material, software, videos being posted and shared by web users, to bring justice to those who are continually misusing the internet for their personal gain. So obviously there's a lot of crime that goes on with the internet, but it would be quite difficult to police the internet due to the amount of staff that would be required and maybe the arguments between different countries about what rules should be acceptable when using the internet. Every country has their own policies with regard to their use of the internet. In some countries, particular websites are filtered, and in other countries these same websites are not filtered. So it would be quite difficult to police the internet. Okay, in many countries, hacking of a computer system is an offence. So explain using examples the term hacking. Hacking is the unauthorized access to computer systems with the intention of causing harm. Hackers could edit, delete and steal data. Hackers could also introduce viruses to a computer network to cause disruption. On the other hand, hackers could be employed to exploit weaknesses of the system. Describe the measures that should be taken to help protect data from being hacked. The usernames and strong passwords to stop, or the use of usernames and strong passwords to stop remote and local logins. Also, using different passwords for different accounts would reduce the chance of hacking. Biometric systems could be used to ensure the official user is present. Okay, so now we're looking at methods of authentication, so network security. So authentication techniques are used to ensure only authorized users are able to gain access to a network via username, password, biometrics, swipe cards, TAN, which is transaction authentication number, and two-factor authentication. So let's first of all look at passwords as a method of authentication. So with any account, typically you're required to enter a username and a password. Okay, so the disadvantage of using a password is a password can be easily guessed, especially if they're simple, maybe the name of a pet or your favorite color. Passwords may be seen by others as you type it in. Passwords can be stolen and be used by other people. Spyware software could be used log keys to key presses to gain passwords. Passwords can be hacked by using password generating software. So what can we do to avoid your password being intercepted? So we can set strong passwords which include multiple characters such as letters and numbers. We can ensure the password is regularly changed. We can avoid using the same password for all of your accounts, and we can install spyware software which will block the installation of any keylogging software. Okay, so setting a strong password should be at least maybe 8 characters, including letters and numbers. Avoid using names or words which could be easily guessed, and the use of upper and lower case letters. So when users log on to their online accounts, they may also be asked for additional information to verify their accounts. So for example, with some online banking websites, they may ask you a security question. So users may be asked to answer a security question related to their account. Typical question could include the mother's maiden name. Okay, also with online banking websites, users may be required to identify an image which is linked to their account. So they have to select an image which has been selected and which links to your account. Okay, users will have to confirm if the image shown is the one they selected as their account image. So as you can see, I have an image here. You may have to confirm this is your image or not. Use examples to describe the difference between a weak password and a strong password. A weak password is easy to guess and includes few characters and consists of all letters or all digits. A weak password typically relates to a user, for example, their favorite color. A strong password is difficult to guess and contains many characters. Also, a strong password uses a mixture of uppercase letters, digits, and symbols. So we have additional methods of authentication. How do we identify yourself to the system? So the first one we're going to be looking at is biometrics. So that could be fingerprints, retina scan, iris scan, face scans, and vocal recognition. So the overview advantage of using biometric data is biometrics is unique to the individual. Only the person with the biometric features can access the network, cannot copy or replicate biometric data. So let's say, for example, staff have to sign in the morning using their fingerprints. Only the person present with a fingerprint can sign themselves in. No one else can sign that particular person in. Okay, magnetic swipe cards also could be used as a method of authentication. Swipe cards are used to gain access to a system by swiping a card into the reader. Swipe cards are easy to use and update. Could be used to gain entry into a room, a hotel room, for example. So the card would have to be swiped to gain entry into a room. The disadvantage of a swipe card is if it's lost, then anyone could use that card to gain access or gain entry. Okay, so the next two, transaction authentication number, TAN, and two-factor authentication, these are used with online banking services. So let's have a look at two-factor authentication first. Two-factor authentication involves the user typing in their password and typing in a code. So for example, a user is logging into their online banking website. So they will first of all type in their username and password. Okay, then with two-factor authentication, a code will be sent to the registered phone of the account as a text message. Okay, the user will be prompted to look at their phone. Normally it's a 4-digit number, and they will be asked to enter that 4-digit number into the web browser to continue logging onto their online banking account. So let's say, for example, someone has managed to get hold of your password or username. That's the first level of security. The second level of security is the two-factor authentication. So the code that's sent to your phone will be required to be entered in to be able to log into your account. So this is a second measure to prevent unauthorized access to your account. If an unauthorized attempt is made to log into an account, then a text message will alert the user. So the two-factor authentication basically means you have to type in a username and password, and also a security 4-digit PIN which will be sent to the registered phone number. The phone number will then, or the 4-digit PIN will then have to be entered into their website to gain access to your online banking account. Okay, transaction authentication number. So TAN is used by online banking services. So let's say, for example, we've managed to log in, we've typed in our username and password, we received the two-factor authentication code, and we've typed it in and we've logged into our account. Now let's say, for example, I want to transfer money from my account into somebody else's account. So another method of authentication and security is to use a transaction authentication number. So the bank will supply you with a small device that looks like this. Before we're making a transaction to another account, the user will be requested to put their card into this reader here, and this reader will then give a number, a transaction authentication number. The user will insert the bank card into a TAN reader, which we just discussed, which will then provide a code. The code will need to be entered to complete the transaction. So without the code, this transaction cannot be completed. So let's say, for example, someone has managed to gain your username and password. They've stolen your mobile phone, so they've been able to receive the two-factor authentication, and they've logged into your account. Okay, they still can't make a transaction without your card and this reader here, which has been supplied specifically by your bank with a set of numbers unique to your account. So to transfer money, you'd have to put your card into this reader. The reader will give you a transaction authentication number. This number would have to be entered into the web browser for you to complete the transaction. So for you to transfer money into another account. Okay, typical exam question. Describe alternative methods of authentication apart from user ID and password that bank could use to improve the security of online transactions. So keywords, biometrics, security questions, two-factor authentication, and TAN. So transaction authentication number. So bank only using user ID and password as the sole method of authentication could potentially be risky. Passwords can easily be guessed or hacked by using keylogging software. In addition, passwords can be generated by using password generators. To improve security, customers could be asked to answer a personal security question linked to their account to identify themselves to the bank. They could also be requested to select an image to verify their account. Since biometric data is unique to the individual, it could be used to provide more secure login as data cannot be copied. In addition, the bank could request for a transaction authentication number when customer to complete a transaction. Finally, two-factor authentication could be implemented, which would require the user to enter a code which would have been sent to their mobile phone as part of the login process. Okay. Biometric methods are increasingly being used to authorize user access to a computer system. Explain, giving examples why biometric methods are considered to be a more secure method of authorizing access to a network than using ID and passwords. So biometric methods are more secure methods of authentication because it contains unique data which cannot be copied, guessed or overseen or stolen like passwords. Only the person with the unique biometric features can gain access to the network, whereas anyone with a password would be able to gain access. Fingerprints, retina scans, facial characteristics, voice recognition can be used to identify individuals to a network. Explain using examples what is meant by authentication techniques. Authentication techniques are a method of identifying yourself to a system. An example is using a password and user ID. Okay, so now let's look at viruses and spyware in a little bit more detail. So at the start of this presentation, we looked at potential threats to a network. So we looked at viruses and spyware. So let's see what the definition is and the potential threat to data. So a computer virus is a piece of programming code or software which can install and replicate itself onto a computer system without the user's permission. A computer virus can cause the following problems. Causes the computer to crash, so the computer can become slower, unresponsive. Sometimes files can be deleted, leads to computer malfunction. Data files can be copied by hackers or the files could be corrupted. Could stop production until a virus has been quarantined. Okay, so let's look at spyware. So spyware gathers data from computers without the user knowing. Spyware could monitor key presses to gain personal information or passwords. This information would be sent to the hacker. So basically, sometimes you wouldn't even realize you got spyware software running in the background of your computer. The objective of the spyware software is to gather personal data from your computer without the user knowing. With the virus, you will know you have a virus on your computer because obviously your computer performance will be affected. The computer could crash more often, it could become slower, it could become unresponsive. With the spyware software, it may not be necessary for you to realize the spyware is working in the background to obtain personal information, or maybe to obtain which websites you've been looking at. Okay, so how can we avoid getting a virus or spyware on our computers? We can install antivirus or spyware software and the use of the firewall. Okay, so let's start again. Installing antivirus and spyware software and the use of a firewall is not enough to keep your computer safe. You also need to pay attention to the following points. So, do not download any files from untrusted sources, including email attachments. Do not install illegal software onto your computer. Do not click on links from unknown websites. Do not connect storage devices, for example USBs, from unknown sources. You have to ensure, so you may have antivirus installed or spyware installed. You have to ensure virus or spyware software is kept up to date and virus definitions are regularly updated. So it's very useful to have an antivirus software which is kept up to date, to have a subscription which updates the software to combat new viruses. Okay. So let's look at a couple of exam questions. So John is working on a school history project and saves his work. He is told by one of his teachers that the school network has become infected by a computer virus. Explain what is meant by a computer virus and give examples of how a computer virus can affect a computer. So a virus is a piece of software programming code that infects a computer by attaching itself to files. A computer virus has the ability to replicate itself. The virus can cause the computer to crash or to shut down. It can delete and corrupt files on a computer. Computer operations, files or software can become unstable or unresponsive. John copies his history project from the school network onto his home computer using a pen drive. There are many ways his home computer can become infected by a computer virus. Describe 3 ways in which John could protect his home computer from being infected. So, scan the pen drive as it's been inserted into the computer. Use antivirus software to scan the computer hard drive on a regular occasion. Also, John needs to ensure he does not use media from unknown sources or downloads attachments from unknown email addresses. The antivirus software should be regularly updated to protect against the latest threats. Okay, so safety issues regarding data transfer. So how can a firewall be used to improve security in a network or on your home computer? So a firewall will prevent computers accessing undesirable or unauthorized websites. A firewall will monitor and control incoming and outgoing data traffic, prevents unauthorized computers using the internet accessing your computer, warns you regarding threats, allows you to accept or reject downloaded programs. So you may receive an error message which maybe stops you from continuing on with a particular website or downloading a particular piece of application. Keeps a list of undesirable sites or IP addresses, keeps a list of acceptable sites or IP addresses, helps to prevent malware or viruses getting into your computer from the network. So it will provide a barrier to prevent these threats from attacking your computer. Okay, so exam question. The organization has a computer network which is connected to the internet. The router contains a firewall. Explain why a firewall is needed. The firewall is needed for network security. It controls the incoming and outgoing network traffic. A firewall establishes a barrier between a trusted, secure internal network and the internet. In addition, it logs incoming and outgoing traffic and stops malicious traffic. Furthermore, it prevents computers connecting to unwanted websites. Also, the firewall prevents untrusted, unrecognized computers accessing data on the system. So, encryption. Let's look at encryption. So, encryption is a process of converting information into a form that is meaningless to anyone except holders of a key. So, the first part of encryption is to scramble up the data, so data is encrypted. If the data is intercepted, then it prevents people from understanding and reading the data. The person with the key is able to decrypt and understand the data. So disadvantages: data can still be deleted from the system. Criminals can use encryption to incriminating material. So criminals can use encryption to keep incriminating material secure. So an example of encryption and how it could be used is, let's say for example you're logging onto your online banking website. You're typing in your username and you're typing in your password. Obviously you want to keep these details secure. So when you are logging into these websites, it will be a secure connection. So you'll notice the web address will say HTTPS, which will be a secure socket layer connection. So if you're connected to a secure website, the data will be encrypted. So for example, if you do type in your username and password, and if it is intercepted by a third party, then this data will be meaningless because the data has been encrypted, it will be scrambled, and if the data is intercepted, it will not be in a form that can be understood by a third party. Okay, so the online banking website will have a key to decrypt the data so the data can be understood. This could also be used, for example, when you're typing in your credit card details online. The data will be encrypted, so if the credit card details was intercepted, it would become meaningless to those people. Only the people with the key is able to decrypt the data to understand the credit card number. Okay, so describe the process of encryption and give an example. So keywords, data, scrambled key, decrypted, online transactions. So when using online banking, data will be encrypted. When a user logs onto a secure website, they will enter personal details into the web page. The information will then be encrypted, scrambled. So if the information was to be intercepted, it would be meaningless for them. Once the bank receives the information, they will be able to decrypt the information using a key and convert it into a form which can be understood. Okay, so the role of a proxy server in a network is also very important. So a proxy server can be used to monitor internet usage. It can block certain websites. The server passes on requests to the internet, so passes the requested web pages to individual computers, can store, cache the web pages, can act as a buffer between the internet and a LAN, can act as a web server. I think the main purpose of the proxy server is basically to monitor internet usage and to block certain websites. Okay, so let's now look at the Data Protection Act. The Data Protection Act applies to paper-based or electronic forms of data stored on a computer. The Data Protection Act is to protect the rights of the individual who the data is obtained from. Web-based businesses such as Amazon or eBay store sensitive data about customers, including payment details. They would have to abide by the Data Protection Act to keep the data secure. So principles of the Data Protection Act. Number 1, data must be fairly and lawfully processed. Number 2, data can only be processed for the stated purpose. Number 3, data must be adequate, relevant and not excessive. 4, data must be accurate. 5, data must not be kept longer than necessary. 6, data must be processed in accordance with the data subject rights. 7, data must be kept secure. 8, data must not be transferred to another country unless they have adequate protection. So, typical exam questions. So, most data protection acts include the principles that should be stored securely. List 4 other principles of a typical data protection act. So, information must be processed fairly and lawfully. Information collected must be processed for limited purposes. Information collected must be adequate, relevant and not excessive. Information collected must be accurate and up to date. Information must not be held for longer than necessary. Information must be processed in accordance with the individual's rights. Information should not be transferred outside the area of the Act unless adequate levels of protection exist. Okay, so we're going to be looking at other types of network communication. So we're going to be looking at physical faxing, email communication and electronic faxing. So physical faxing requires a fax machine and a telephone line. Number of the recipient is dialed before the document is copied and sent. Physical documents are printed and can be signed. So basically a fax machine is a document will be scanned in and would be received at the other end by the person with the fax machine. Okay. So the disadvantage of using a fax machine to send documents, anyone can access fax documents. Okay, so let's say if it's a personal contract and it goes into another office for an employee, Anyone walking by the fax machine can access that contract and see personal details part of that contract. Okay, the fax machine may be out of paper or ink, so therefore it will not be able to print off the fax, or it may be disconnected from a power source, for example. No notification of fax is received. Okay, so let's compare physical faxing to email. So with email communication, you can send multiple attachments, can send multiple recipients in one message, or can send two multiple recipients in one message. Emails can be received instantly and accessed on many platforms, including tablets and phones. With an email, typically the user will receive a notification of the email on their phone, for example. The email can be received outside of office hours, okay, so it can be received at any times. With a fax machine, if you're not within the office, you will not receive the fax immediately. You may have to receive it the next morning. Okay, email attachments may include viruses, may receive spam, unwanted mail, may receive phishing, scam emails to obtain personal data. Okay, so let's look at electronic faxing. Electronic fax is sent via an internet connection. So the fax machine uses a telephone line, a telephone network. An email uses an internet connection, and also electronic faxing uses an internet connection. So there's no need to buy a fax machine, ink or paper. Electronic fax documents are sent to an email, which will ensure the correct person will receive the fax, so less chance of the documents being intercepted. Electronic fax can also be sent directly to a fax machine. Sends fax from any location with an internet connection. No additional cost to send fax over the internet network. So let's look at the advantage and disadvantage of using email compared with faxing. So with the fax, the advantage is documents can be signed which are legally accepted. Physical copies of documents can be sent and automatically printed. So let's look at the advantage of using email. Emails are password protected, so less likely chance of data being intercepted. Emails can be received instantly. Attachments can be edited and sent back. Can send to many recipients at the same time. So the disadvantage of using a fax, data is more likely to be intercepted once it's been printed from a fax machine. There could be delays in receiving a fax due to a busy telephone line or lack of paper or ink. Fax can only be received during office hours. Not everyone has a fax machine. So let's look at a disadvantage of using email. Can't be used when documents need to be signed. Viruses can be downloaded from attachments. Unwanted emails could be received, for example phishing or spam. So let's look at a typical exam question. Describe the advantage and disadvantage of using email compared with faxing. Okay, so email can be received on many different platforms, so PC, laptop, smartphone, instantly. In contrast, a fax will only be received once it's been printed. If the fax machine is offline or there's a problem with the printing, lack of paper or ink, then a fax will not be received. Also, a fax can only be received if the recipient has a fax machine and during office hours. In addition, the fax can be intercepted by anyone close to the fax machine. On the other hand, email is password protected, which would ensure the security of the email. The main advantage of the email is that a message can be sent to many recipients and attachments can be added. Nevertheless, unwanted emails could be received and viruses could be downloaded from attachments. The main advantage of a fax is that if you receive a physical copy of a document and signed, so you receive a physical copy of the document and signed copies can be legally accepted. Describe two similarities between physical faxing and electronic faxing. Okay, physical faxing and electronic faxing both involve you being assigned a fax phone number and the use of a phone line. Both can involve the use of a hard copy original. Describe three differences between physical faxing and electronic faxing. Physical faxing requires the purchase of a fax machine. Electronic faxing requires the use of or purchase of a computer. Physical faxes can be picked up by anyone, however, electronic faxes go straight to your email address. With a physical fax, the phone line could be busy or engaged. In addition, physical faxes must have paper and the fax machine could get paper jams. Electronic fax is quicker to arrive than the physical since it goes directly to your email. Okay, so let's look at other types of communication which we can do over our network. Let's look at video conferencing. So a video conferences both uses video and sound using an internet connection. So it can be used to have a business meeting when people are in different locations. So normally you'll have two parties. Maybe it could be two people in different cities, London and Manchester, having a conference. So the web camera will basically capture moving images. Okay, the microphone will allow you to speak. The monitor will allow you to see the other party in a different city, and the speakers will allow you to listen to what they are saying. So basically we can have a conference and we can see and we can hear what they are saying in the other city. So the advantage of having the video conference is there's no need to travel to have meetings, which could cut down on traveling costs, including flights and hotels, and also traveling time. Video conferences can be held at a short notice. Facilitates also long distance learning, so students can access live lectures without the need to travel. Now, the disadvantage of having a video conference to communicate between two parties is there could be technical problems with the internet or hardware which could affect the quality of the video conference. So let's say, for example, a company is interviewing using Skype. So for one country, they're recruiting staff from another country. And let's say the quality of the internet connection is poor on either side, then it will be difficult to communicate and to answer. Setting up costs to purchase hardware, software, and to provide relevant training to staff to use this method of video conferencing or this method of communication. So staff will have to be trained on how to use the equipment to complete a video conference. A lack of personal contact you would have if it was a face-to-face meeting. So some people would prefer to meet face-to-face rather than talking into a monitor and a screen. They would prefer to sit with someone, have dinner with somebody and talk about business over a dinner rather than talking through a monitor screen. Different time zones could make it difficult to find a suitable time to have a meeting, and also it would not be possible to sign documents or to share physical copies of documents. So describe the advantage and disadvantages of a video conference. So video conference can be held at short notice without the need to travel. As a result, traveling time and expenses would be saved. However, setup costs to buy equipment could initially be expensive. Also, staff would require training on to use the technology. In addition, during a video conference, there could be technical problems which could affect the quality of the sound and video. Video conferencing could also facilitate long distance learning. Nevertheless, the different time zones could be an issue when arranging a meeting. Moreover, the lack of personal contact could make it more difficult to understand the tone and context of the conversation. Furthermore, it would not be possible to sign documents. Describe 3 drawbacks of setting up and using video conferencing. So power cuts could lead to parts of the video conferencing shutting down. Also, a lip sync problem time lag could mean the picture is not running at the same speed as the sound. Some participants may be video conferencing outside of work hours due to time zones. In addition, it would be expensive to purchase the hardware and software required. Furthermore, the quality of the video conference would be dependent on a reliable internet access. Staff would also have to be trained, and this could be an additional expense for the company. Moreover, documents will not be able to be signed and physical objects cannot be examined. So, network communication. So let's also look at audio conferencing and web conferencing. So these are different to a video conference. Okay. So an audio conference. An audio conference can be done over the telephone network or using a computer making use of voice over internet protocol. Okay, so the user would require a telephone, possibly a microphone or speaker if it's done over a computer network. The organizer of the phone conference is given a unique PIN which is shared with participants. So this conference will take place over the telephone. For participants to join, they have to dial the conference phone number, then they would have to enter the PIN to participate in the conference. So now the web conference can be done using an internet connection. It's very similar to a video conference as participants can hear audio and see a live video stream. Participants can join a web conference by clicking on the supplied link from the organizer. Participants can join and leave the web conference at any time. Instant messaging feature is available to communicate with other participants. Participants can be given permission to speak and to share content such as images, videos, or presentations. So an example of this could be maybe a lecture is going on and you can't attend the lecture, so you can watch it via a live stream. You can participate by instant messaging, and you can talk to other members or people watching a conference, or you could be asked to talk if you have been given permission. So to gain access to the web conference, you will have to click on a supplied link. So how do we set up an audio conference? So first of all, the person responsible for setting up the audio conference has to contact the audio conference provider. A phone number and a PIN is provided for the organizer and the participants. The conference details will be emailed to the participants, so that could be the phone number and the PIN. The organizer calls the numbers and enters the PIN. Participants then call the number and enter their PIN. So it could be one or two ways. The organizer calls the participants and then they would have to enter the PIN, or participants call the number and they enter their PIN to take part of the conference or to participate in the conference. To set up a web conference, first of all, the person responsible would have to contact a web conference provider, similar to contacting an audio conference provider. A web link and a PIN is provided for the organizer and the participants. The conference details can be then emailed to the participants, which include the supplied link. Organizer starts the conference. Participants can join by accessing the web link provided and entering their PIN. Okay. The director of a multinational car company needs to communicate with each other. They've decided the best way to do this is through web conferencing. Describe web conferencing and how it could be used in this scenario. So web conferencing allows for real-time collaboration and communication. Multiple users are connected to the internet and see the same screen at all times in their web browsers. The web conference allows users to instant message each other details of the car. Okay. Voice over internet protocol could also allow users to discuss the car range. Full motion video can be used to show the car being taken for a test drive. Okay, there are several ways in which members of an organization can organize meetings. These include video, audio, or web conferencing. An organization is planning an important meeting with the directors of the three main offices. They are going to set up an audio conference. Describe the process of setting up this type of conference. To set up an audio conference, a provider would have to be contacted. The conference provider would provide a phone number and a PIN for the organizer and participants. The organizer would then email the details of the conference to all participants, including the phone number and the PIN. At the start of the conference, the organizer calls the provider number and types in a PIN. Then each participant dials the number and enters the PIN to participate in the conference. Okay, so this is the end of the chapter 4 networks chapter. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Please show support to this network and subscribe below, and please add your comments below if you would like more videos like this. Thank you for your time.